really appreciate you taking the time to chat with us today. We had a very good chat with Rachel talking about, and obviously Eric has worked with you now for a little bit, and so we certainly wanted to share your story, share information about OnePULSE Foundation, as well as kind of provide additional information that can help help you fulfill your mission, because certainly it is a great one, and certainly from everything that we know publicly about the event that occurred and everything that you've done since then, you certainly have made an impact and are really driving the local community and the community worldwide in a positive direction, and you're really doing a lot. So thank you so much for being here and sharing your time with us. We appreciate it.
No problem. Glad to do it. Thank you for having us.
Sure. So I figured maybe we could start off. Maybe if you'd like, Barbara and Scott, maybe share a little bit about yourselves and how you founded the organization, some of the events that led up to it, as well as, and then we'll just kind of bring us up to speed and then kind of start the discussion from there, if that makes sense.
Sure, I'll do. I am Barbara Poma. I am the owner of the Pulse nightclub. I am the founder of the OnePULSE Foundation. The most asked question I think I've gotten in 4.5 years is, how did I wind up as a straight woman owning a gay bar? That was like a big hot question, I guess, burning question for everybody. The answer is kind of simple. I guess for me it's simple. For me it's my normal. I was lucky enough to be raised with my older brother, who happens to be gay. There are 5 of us kids in the family, but John is my closest sibling to me in age. He is 4 years older than I, so he was my one of my big brothers, my closest big brother. And so back in the 80s, when John was coming out in our family, it did not go very well. It was a very typical coming out story to this crazy Catholic Italian family, and it really was a tumultuous time for our family. And so while my parents were trying to, when I say fix John, when they were trying to send him to therapists and pastors and all kinds of places to try and, fix him, every time he'd want to leave the house, my mother would always say to him, take your sister, because she figured, if you take your sister, who's going to do anything wrong when you got your younger sister with you? She was wrong. John took me everywhere, and John took me to Gay Beach in South Florida. He took me to the nightclubs. He took me to tea dance on the Strip. I grew up dancing with drag queens, lesbians, gay men. It was my normal. It's all I knew, and I loved it very much. It was tons of fun. No one else my age was having that kind of fun, especially like 15. But I loved it, and I did not realize it wasn't normal until I actually went off to college. When I went to college, I would drag all my girlfriends to the local gay bars here in Orlando. They'd be like, why are we going there? What kind of place is that? I'm like, oh, you're going to have a blast. It's going to be the most fun you've ever had in your whole life, I promise you. And so that's when I realized that might be a little different. But at any rate, John also sadly died in the AIDS epidemic in the early 90s. He was HIV positive as early as 1985. Died February 13th, 1990. 30 years ago, believe it or not. 30 years this year? Yes, 30 years this year. He's been gone. So he's been gone longer than he was alive. My brother did not live to his 27th birthday. When I lost him, I lost my connection to the community that I grew up in. Because you don't have him, who's going to do your hair, dress you up, and take you out? So it was a hard time for me. I lost my best friend. He was my first best friend, and losing him was very traumatic for me. I'm sure it was for everybody in my family, but everyone felt it a little differently, depending on how old they were. So I spent most of my time after that really doing a lot of work in the HIV realm, whether it be in babies who were born at the hospitals and their families left them there. We would hold the babies, and sometimes there was a foster family that would take the HIV positive babies home, and we would help them take care of them. I also delivered food and lunches to a lot of the boys who were in the near end stages of HIV and couldn't leave their houses anymore or wouldn't leave their houses anymore. So just go sit and have lunch with them, draw the shades, let some light in, and hang out for a little while with them. When John was sick with HIV, it was very much, for the younger generation who don't know what it was like to live through that epidemic, it was very much like the movies you see, when the nurses would not go into the room, and they would not feed them, they would not bathe them, they wouldn't touch them, they didn't talk to them. And so we lived through that. I remember the nurse walking in one day, finding me laying in bed with my brother, and she's literally screaming at me, get out of the bed, get out of the bed. And I'm like, no, I'm hanging out with my brother, so I'm going to do. I was with John when he took his very last breath, my mother and I. It was the first time I ever watched someone pass away, take their last breath. I was 21 years old or so, 22 years old at the time. So, I buried John. I buried every single one of his friends, all of them. And it was just a horrific time for the community, and it really left a mark on my life. So fast forward a few years, I get married, and my husband and I, we have babies, we're raising kids at home, and I have a friend here in Orlando, cliche as it is, my gay best friend, who always wanted to own a bar. And he's like, would you guys ever want to own a bar? And we're like, no. We owned restaurants, we had other businesses, we had properties, we're business owners. So, this is not important to us. We're hospitality people. And I ran all of those with my husband for years. And so my husband was like, what would I want to do with a gay bar? And he's like, ask your wife. I bet your wife would do it. And so he asked me, and I'm like, yeah, I'd love to do that. And so it became what we call my most expensive hobby. Because everything we made there, we really put a lot of money into it to keep it beautiful. But from its inception, Pulse was a place that intentionally, and very intentionally, had two main points. One I call our mission. And our mission was just to be a clean, beautiful space that you'd be proud to bring your mother. Because the bars my brother grew up in were not. And it was really heartbreaking for her. I'd hear her talk to my aunts, her sisters, and she would be crying, and she would just, thinking like this is the best that was ever going to be offered to her son. Is he going to be treated like this his whole life, where he is not mainstream, where he doesn't deserve good things and pretty things in life? And so that was one of our biggest objectives. And sadly, the night of the shooting, we learned that we had been that place, because on the night of the shooting, we did lose two moms. We lost a mom who was dancing with her son, and her gay son, and we lost a mom who was out for her first mom's night out after having her second baby, who left a newborn and a toddler at home without a mom. We also have a mom who survived with her son. Most people don't also realize that we lost some fathers there that night. There were some dads in that building who left their families fatherless. So it was sad to learn after that, and it was a really hard thing as a parent to really to really experience. One of the second most important things for us to do was to make sure that we're always a place where the LGBT community was united in its own way, because I don't know if you've traveled to other cities like Chicago, New York, Atlanta, LA, it's always like, oh, that's a lesbian bar, that's a twinks bar, that's a bear bar, that's, and it was always really, to me, segmented. And so I thought to myself, no, Pulse isn't going to be that way. Pulse is for everyone every single night of the week. And I would get approached by, lesbians, be like, why can't we have a ladies' night? I'm like, why can't you come on Tuesday? Like, oh, you can come any day. There's girls here. And so, we made sure that we staffed it with girls, boys, trans, every color, every race, every size, every shape, every age. So when you walked in, you saw someone like you, and I didn't care or who you were attracted to. So we wanted to make sure there was someone for everyone every night of the week, and it worked. People told me it wouldn't work. I was also the first non-smoking gay bar in Orlando. Everyone told me that wasn't going to work either, but I was like, I hate smoke. I don't want my staff working in smoke every single night. And so we were smoke-free, except for and we made a patio where people could smoke. So that was a couple of things that we did that were really different. In 2004, that was a very different thing to bring to Orlando. And so that's how Pulse was born, and that's its mission, which like I said, after the shooting, I received thousands and thousands of private messages. And I didn't even know what Messenger was at the time, because I'm old. And so I would wake up and have hundreds and thousands of messages, either ones that I didn't even know existed because they were in that little place, so if you're not your friend, and I would read them, and I answered every single one of them, and it was just story after story. I came out there, I met my wife there, I met my husband there, I wore my first pair of shoes and lashes there, I danced for the first time, I came out there, it was the first gay bar I walked into. And so it was really beautiful to read those stories. It gave me lots of comfort, and that's why I answered every single one of them. But also made me sad because of the loss to the community, and the loss everyone was feeling. Being Orlando gets 76 million visitors a year. We saw people internationally that came every single year, and we had bartenders who worked on the day we opened Pulse to the day we closed it. And so they had seen people, they recognized flight attendants from different places. Oh, they're in town this week, or who's in port. And so they knew everybody, and they knew what they said. I got people who said, I didn't care how many, I only came twice a year, but when I walked in, Bobby or Kate, they had my drink. It was sitting on the bar. They remembered me and they knew what I drank. And so Pulse really became that place. I think the tragedy was extraordinarily um, monumental for the community, not just here and not just in our country, but around the world, because everybody has a pulse. Every person who is LGBTQ plus has a place where they can tell that story, where they came out and where they met someone, how the first brave space and first safe space. And people now, the word safe space has become really cliche, and it bothers me. Yes, I realize that your church should be safe and your school should be safe and all those places should be safe, but that is not what it meant to this community. And to this community, it was their safe haven in lots of ways where they could just be themselves and it be okay. And what happened to Pulse was like a home invasion, and it was a home invasion for everybody around the world because they understood what it meant to be in your own safe space like that and to have that taken from you. So then after the shooting happened, I was left to my own accord to figure out what to do. There had never been a terrorist attack or a mass shooting of this size on private property. Think about it, most of them are in schools, federal buildings. I mean, they're just not usually happening in a private business like this kind. I mean, sometimes it happens at a Walmart, but that's also a big corporation. We're talking small business owner. 49 people were killed there, and you had 68 people who were injured and hundreds traumatized. And so this was at the time, it was hadn't happened to that scale. And so the FBI literally, they did their job. They came in, they did their job and everything they had to do, and then they just hand you your keys. And they said, here you go, Ms. Poma, sign right here. And so I did. And so then I've been inside the building and realized how sacred that space had become instantly. That was like, everyone's like, just reopen. I'm like, oh, you haven't been in there. You can't go in there. You can't do it. It doesn't feel like Pulse. It's not Pulse anymore. It's not like that. It doesn't look like that. It does not smell like that. It's not what it is. And so I knew immediately it was sacred ground, and it was time to figure out what to do next. And so with that, I really I paired up with actually one of our victims' moms, our local curator here in Orlando for our history center, an artist, and I called Oklahoma City. And I said, hi, my name is Barbara Poma. I'm the owner of the Pulse nightclub. Can you help me? And they're like, absolutely, hold on. And so I spoke to Carrie Watkins, and we flew out there. We sat down with her team. We just give ring questions, and we did. Got home, we regrouped, and I made the same phone call 9/11. Just literally, it's fake. I'm like, how do I get a human on the phone? And I just did. And so they said, come, and we went. And so that's how the journey began. And since then, we have a task force which is full of our family survivors, first responders, and all those our local community who wanted to be involved in the project. And then we built a national board which spans everywhere from New York to California and a few states in between. And we realized that we wanted to embark on this journey of creating a national memorial museum dedicated to what happened there, but also to LGBT history and to the response from the world and what we can do next. Like, how do you take what happened here and make something beautiful out of it? Because I know the majority of the families feel that way. I know our community feels that way. Because when we first started the project, the first thing that both 9/11 and Oklahoma City told me to do was to create a public survey. And so we built an online survey. We had local experts in Orlando who dedicated their time to creating it. And so we put it out there. We had over 2,100 people participate in it. We had families and survivors and first responders, and every single one of them had their own code. So those results were kept separate from the general public and from each other. So we knew exactly what each demographic or genre had, how they felt about it. And so out of all the questions that were asked, the one that resonates, and this will help you understand all the memorials you'll visit in your lifetime if you do that, because I've been on a tour for 4 years and seen almost everyone in our country, is that it's a list of words and feelings. And so you have a list of them and you pick your top 6. And so when the people in New York City did theirs, their 6 words were like loss, sorrow, anger, sadness. Oh my gosh, I can't think. They were all very dark and harrowing words. It was just awful. It was like this sense of emptiness. And so when you visit 9/11, you will find those 2 holes in the ground that make you feel all those things. That was intentional. Those words were given to those designers, and those designers designed a memorial that would make you feel that way. And so when we did ours, our 6 words were love, hope, unity, courage, acceptance, and strength. Our families don't want you to be sad there. They want people to come and see what happened. They want their children remembered. They want it never to be forgotten. But they want you to bring your families. They want people to come here. And they said, we don't want it to be a sad place. So that's how our design is set. And so after what, this work of this board and this task force have done for 4 years is phenomenal. Like I said, we have traveled the country, visiting every memorial and museum, whether it be even the new lynching memorial museum in Montgomery, Alabama. We've been every place in D.C. We've been to Shanksville. We've been to the Pentagon, and we've done the roundabout of the country and done our homework. And we learned there every time we went. It was always an executive trip where we just sat down with people and we learned what they did well and what they would do differently. And so we've taken all that back home with us. And that's how we led to this RFQ process of picking a design team. And so last year or so, well, before COVID, so maybe it's 2 years now, I don't remember, I don't know what year we're in anymore, but we launched we launched a design process, design RFQ, and we received proposals from 68 teams from 19 different countries around the world.
Wow.
And so we had to narrow that down to 6. And so those 6 came, built models and came to Orlando into presentations. Everything is family first for the foundation. If you don't know that, family first is in survivors and first responders and general public. So the families got to spend a whole day in that room with the 6 models, reading everything and putting all their comments down. And survivors and family members and first responders did it. Then the community came in. We know over 2,000 comments on each one of those things, and then a jury picked. And so our final selection, which you can see on the website, of course, is beautiful. It was from a team from Paris who we work with, and so we are in the design phase. We've been working this year, literally, COVID was actually a good year for COVID, I guess, for us, because it let us time to actually go into design refinements, which take a year. And so we have been working on that, and now we are hopefully going to break ground on the Survivors Walk and the Memorial this year. By the end of the year, this year we'll break ground on those 2 projects, and we're excited about that. And the museum will break ground next year. All goes well, is the plan. I'll let Scott talk, or give myself a break because I'm tired of hearing me. You can ask questions. I can start. There really is so much to tell you about what we're doing and where we're going. So.
Yeah, and I was fortunate. I'm the Chief Communications Officer for the foundation. I have lived in Orlando since 1993 and had the privilege of working and opening 2 other projects that were pretty major, which was working with the Orlando Magic for 12 years and opening the Amway Center and then opening Dr. Phillips Center as well. And I actually was working at Dr. Phillips Center when the tragedy happened. And as you all know, our front yard of Dr. Phillips Center became a gathering place for everyone other than Pulse itself at the memorial. So we were in tune with it every day too, in terms of the way the global community came together to pay their respects to what happened. So have been in Orlando, have always worked in community relations, public relations, and obviously had felt the impact of the tragedy just like the rest of the city and the world. I had moved away for a couple years and decided to come back in 2019, and a friend of mine who's actually on the board for OnePULSE Foundation mentioned that they were looking for a communications person. I had worked with our COO, who reports to Barbara, at the Dr. Phillips Center as well. So it just became one of those things where you can't ignore the signs. And it was something that I really personally, as a member of the LGBTQ community, it was very important to me, and it's a project of the heart for me. And once I met Barbara and she kind of laid out her vision and the mission of the organization, everything, I knew that I had to be a part of it. So my job really moving forward and for the last year is putting together the communication structure for internal communications and external communications, working with the media. Nicole Parker, who works with me, is the direct link to all the stakeholders that Barbara mentioned earlier. So she works every day in the interest of our family members, our survivors, and our first responders. And as Barbara said, we have a rule here that they get to know everything before anyone else. So anytime we launch a new program, or have even just something like Out Love Hate that we recently launched, or just different events that we're doing. We audit all of our financials. We present it to them first. And as Barbara said, even through the design competition, they saw everything first. They were the first to give feedback. We were able to extract all their feedback, keep it separate from the general community of those 2,200 responses. So our goal is that they never are surprised by anything, right? That they hear and see and touch and feel everything that we're doing every step of the way of this project until, and even after we open and we're operating. You know, their opinions are very important to us. And in the last year, we've been able to do a lot of listening sessions with them as well on what they want the storytelling opportunities to be, especially in the museum, even at the memorial and the survivors walk. And it's just been a great thing to do. I mean, so if you can imagine all the family members, all the survivors, but also, you know, police, fire, 911, One Blood, everyone that was part of the response. We've been doing listening sessions with them as well, just to see what's important to them as this project moves forward.
Yeah, it was always
phenomenal.
pretty inspirational when we started working together, to see that the families are incredibly so involved, from as something that many people would view as really not part of the mission, the audit or the 990, but giving them the input on something that becomes public record to make sure that they give their blessing and can share their story and their beliefs, along with some of the scholarship promotions that you're putting on now for those families. It's pretty incredible to keep them involved to this point.
Thank you.
It's very important. And you mentioned the 49 legacy scholarships. That's the other, from an education standpoint, is working with the families to name those scholarships and define what they are. And it's probably, for me personally, it's one of the best things I think the foundation does. And it really connects students, both undergraduate students, graduate students, with the family members, and it continues the legacy every year, maybe with different students every year, for the 49. And it's to me one of the best things that happens here.
The families loved it. It was a way that they had said to me, I don't want my child's name just to be on a wall, or you read it once a year on June 12th. They had lives, they had jobs, they had, hobbies and aspirations. And so how can, we make them live on? I was like, well, this is the only way I could think of it. And so when people thought I was crazy, but I said, each one of the scholarships has to be designated to that person specifically. And so we have 8 cosmetology scholarships, and it goes all up to medical school and ophthalmology, and it's everywhere. And people are like, you can't do 49 different ones. I'm like, we don't have a choice, so you need to figure it out, because that's how it's going to go. Otherwise, it means nothing. And the families last year, some of them got to meet the recipients of the scholarships. Every recipient knows which angel they're tied to. They know their story. It is truly so moving to see and be a part of this process. And it's been beautiful. Because
of COVID last year, Barbara got to call every single one of those recipients and tell them what their award recipient was. And so some of the conversations were amazing. Connecting the families were amazing to the students, and we're about to do it again with the second class here at that end of April. 49 phone calls in 8 hours. Figure that out. That's what I do for the whole day. But it really is the best thing.
Yeah. That's amazing. You just have a whole community of people who are, and you were a family member of somebody, a part of that community, and that now has transpired. I'm sure you look back and it has to be overwhelming and thrilling and exciting, just what you've built and how far it's come. And even though something tragic has happened, that community still stood strong and has, I'm sure, gotten even stronger because of OnePULSE and now, OnePULSE Foundation and everything you're doing.
You hope so. For me, it's this work is what got me out of bed the first year every single day. People are like, how are you doing? I'm like, if I don't do this, if I don't have a reason to get up and get out, and if I don't have a mission to do something, it's really what it inspired me to keep moving and move forward. It's truly what I have done every single day since the shooting. And other people who were in the front line at the time, but they all moved on, not moved on, but either went back to their old jobs or doing something else. But for me, I still do Pulse every day. It's still what I do, and it's when you put it in perspective like that, some people are like, oh, ouch. I'm like, yeah, we deal with the families, and we talked to a dad today, and so it's difficult work, but it's rewarding because it's, I don't know, just being connected to them,
Mm-hmm.
the families is so special.
And the thing you learn through this process, even through the listening sessions, is everyone, here we are in the 5-year remembrance ceremony coming up this June, and everyone they're still in different places. You can't define grief, you can't define a timeline for grief, and although there are countless stories of resiliency with the family members and the survivors, and obviously the first responders who went right back to their jobs, we're reminded every day that maybe today wasn't the day I wanted to open the email, but tomorrow we talked to them and they opened the email and they're like, we're so glad we did, right? And you can't put a timeline on it. And so what we found is you have to work with people where they're at and meet them there where they're at, and it's not one size fits all at all at all. And so, and I'm sure every organization that went through something like this, they had the same thing. It's not unique to us by any means, but you just really have to learn how to be flexible and adaptable and work with everyone where they are at that day through a process like this.
Yeah, that's a good message.
Yeah. How do you feel, since the event that took place, the shooting, how do you feel the LGBTQ community has, I guess, changed and moved forward from there? And I guess what have you learned, Barbara, I guess in your conversations and working with individuals about what's transpired, how it's happened, and really how the community, as you said, banded together, but how has it evolved, or what have you learned in the experience of working with many of the families over time? I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of lessons you've learned. The world has started to open their eyes more and more. We're becoming a much more accepting world, which is obviously a positive. But do you feel there has been a big change, or do you feel that the world still has a long way to go? And I know I just asked a very long, strange question, but
No, and I think that I can only talk about what I've seen and who I've spoken to. I don't live, I'm not an LGBT. I mean, I'm an ally, so I'm not part of the community. So I don't know what it's like for a person to walk those shoes every day. I could tell you that there were moments, especially during the political climate, that were frightening. I found that there were people in the last 4.5 years in the LGBT community who will still say, I still can't go into a bar, or even I go anywhere, I'm checking for exits. But you do see movement. I can tell you that our community is forever changed. We've met with faith leaders who had changes of heart. I've met families. Remember, there were some families who found out their child was gay and dead in the same sentence. And so they, had to go through a lot. And then there's people who, there were families who, whether it's through their culture or just lack of understanding, didn't know at the time or wasn't willing to accept and have come full circle. You have family members now who are willing to talk to other people who are having struggles coming out, to talk them off a ledge. I mean, so I know that there's a lot happening here in Orlando, and I do know when I talk to people from different, no matter where I go, which is not very much this last year, but wherever I speak to and wherever I do go, they'll tell me, everyone tells me their full story. I remember where I was when I heard the news. It was the day before our Pride. It was this. I mean, and everyone will walk me through their story, and I watched them walk me through their story, and you could see it in their face, and you could see it, and it's like, that's how I know that this what happened there needs to be remembered. It needs to be recorded, and it needs to be here for generations to come, because the affect globally has been just so profound. And I don't think I answered your question, but it's hard for me to answer that question. It's so broad.
it's too broad. Yeah, too broad. On the night of the shooting, and I don't remember this discussed, but do you remember where you were, or were you physically there when that occurred?
No, I was out of the country. I was actually in Mexico with my daughter, who had just graduated high school. We were on a mother-daughter graduation trip, and so we were there with her two best friends and their mothers when the phone call came in. And my husband was out of town with my son at my other child was at a lacrosse tournament out of town, so neither one of us were here. Just my eldest daughter, who happened to be visiting from Chicago, was at the house.
But Barbara, through our talks and through, all the, the news stories over the years, it's first responders they're a big part of this story. And I think for some of the people outside of our circle of our community, really don't have that idea of really how strong and how that's moved into the Miracle Walk and kind of played its role in the memorial going forward. Do you want to explain kind of what their role was in the whole the shooting and how they came to be and how they molded what we're doing now or what the foundation's doing now?
You mean first responders like the SWAT team and OPD and the sheriff's office?
And as well as ORMC's role in.
Oh, well, gosh, I mean, Orlando Health has been a partner from day one. They were one of our very first largest donors who named the Survivor Walk. They understand what the Survivor Walk is meant to do, which is the journey from Pulse nightclub to the doors of the Level 1 Trauma Center at Orlando Health. It means a lot to their team, to their doctors, nurses, 911 callers, anybody who helped anybody out there, anyone, because there were people who had to clean those rooms up and people who had to notify families. And so everybody who worked that night or during that shift. And so we talk about the survivor journey from Pulse to that trauma center. Some ran, some were carried, some were tossed in the back cars. There weren't 68 ambulances. And so Orlando Health has been a huge partner in helping us create, help be a part of the foundation, but also in that journey of what that walk looks like. And that's the walk that we'll break ground this year. It tells the story of the survivors and it tells the story of all the first responders. And when we talk about the police and the fire and the SWAT, I mean, I remember, and I still see so many of them, and they want to tell you their story too. They're like, I was the one who was here. I was on this side of the building. I did this. I was there. I came in at 2 o'clock. I was on call. I was at home. And they really want to share their stories. And those are hard stories, by the way. And it's amazing to see them want to share them in ways they do. And I remember a couple of really moving stories when someone, really, I mean, as you would imagine, first responder, bigger guy, very straight, and said, I was pulling people out of the building, I trying to get them out to rescue them, and they were some of them were in underwear. They were dancers. They didn't have any clothes on. And he just would look at them and take them and hold them and say, would you like my jacket? And he says, to me, it was, I just wanted to rescue them, and I didn't for 1 second think anything different, and how it changed their lives at that moment.
Yeah.
Last year, when we were not allowed to have the ceremony in person, there happens to be an organic 2:02 in the morning gathering that just kind of happens. You never know who's going to show up. And last year, we had a record number of first responders.
It was amazing.
In uniform.
It was amazing how many people were there. It was the first time I'd been there at 2:02, and I could not believe how many people were there, how many first responders. It was amazing.
Emotional. I'm sure it was very.
It was very emotional. And to Barbara's point too, in our most recent listening sessions we've done with first responders, you hear those stories and it changed them. How could it not change them? And they just felt like, even people who weren't on duty that night came in. Like everyone came in to help because everyone wanted to, help as much as they could. Didn't matter who they worked for, what division they were in. People just came to help because they knew help was needed.
It's always incredible at the same time that you can see what divides communities on a day-to-day basis when you can come together and seem to forget your prejudices. Before that morning, you waking up have gone away when you're needed, and it really shows you that we can get there. We still got somewhere to go, but in those moments you can see that it's possible, and it's just one of those incredible things that happens out of a wake of these disasters.
True.
So we're 2 months off, from the anniversary, and you guys, we know you're planning a ton of stuff. It's kind of an exciting time. I mean, we've spoken to Rachel, and she's given us loads of the excitement that's coming this way, and you guys are really busy. Do you want to highlight some of those things? I know you've molded certainly on your groups of how you're going to have that rally and so on.
Virtually, and we had the remembrance ceremony first, the run second, because of the pandemic. But one of the interesting things that we learned from that, just every year before COVID, we would do the remembrance ceremony, and just because of the size of the footprint of the land there, and And the property, you can probably at best get 3,000 people there during the ceremony. So last year when we had to do it all virtually and we pre-taped it, the most interesting thing happened. We had 60,000 people watch the ceremony. And that to us was, okay, we do, you know, you're just reminded of that global, again, just everyone wants to still feel a part of it and the connectivity of it because of what Barbara said earlier, because there's a pulse in every city, right? And we hear that from a lot of the global pride organizations as well. And then when we did our run last year, we had registered runners from every state in the United States, but also registered runners in 15 countries and territories. So again, that reminder of the global presence. So this year, being the 5-year remembrance, we knew that a lot of people would want to come back. A lot of people would want to come back, even media, to say, okay, how's the community doing? How's the community healed? Where are we now? Those kind of themes. And we fully expected that. So what we're planning now is a whole Remembrance Week that will start Saturday, June 5th with our Community Rainbow Run. And we are very happy to report that our Community Rainbow Run will be in person this year. And we also are going to continue the virtual component because we've had that every year, honestly, since the beginning when the run started. So we'll have at Wayview Park at 7 in the morning again on Saturday, June 5th, in person, but also doing it virtually. And our goal, because we're a competitive group, is to have registered runners from every state and more than 15 countries this year. When we realized that last year, I think we were 5 states out, and we just we literally we've got to get these 5 states, and we ended up doing it. So this year at June 5th, start with Saturday. Sunday night, we are going to do an event at House on Church Street, which is Straight Men Real Makeup, and it's a fundraiser for the foundation where basically straight men get dressed up in drag, and we have actual drag queens on the judging panel, and it's just a really fun night. Yeah, it's a fun night. You guys can go. You need to come. So that'll be 6 o'clock on Sunday night, and then Monday we're doing an interfaith service with the One Orlando Alliance at the United Methodist Church downtown here in Orlando, and that'll be at 7 p.m. Tuesday, we're working right now with the Orlando Gay Chorus on a presentation that will be both music set to photos from J.D. Castro, who's a local photographer here, with a lot of images of, again, how not only the city came together, but how the world came together after the tragedy. Wednesday, our Central Florida Foundation, they do quarterly community conversations virtually. And I think about 500 people can get on those conversations. So Wednesday of that week at 1 o'clock to 2, we will be doing a community conversation around our 5-year remembrance with hopefully 500 people, which we're really excited to have that opportunity as well. Thursday night, we're back down on Church Street at House, and our friend Blue is going to do, hopefully with Hamburger Mary too that night, but we're kind of bringing back that theme, if you all remember, kind of happened organically, Keep Dancing Orlando after the tragedy happened, kind of along that theme, but kind of a celebration that night about music and bringing people together and just some camaraderie that night, that Thursday night. And then Friday, we'll be doing a luncheon, kind of a barbecue for our first responders. And we also will be doing a dinner for our survivors. And that date has not been selected yet. We're still working on that, but we've had some gracious people in the community come together with offering food for all of these. And then Saturday, we get to the ringing of the 49 bells, which is a global, definitely national, but even global at noon on Saturday of the ringing the bells 49 times. We do a meal for our families right before the ceremony, and then we do the ceremony at 7 p.m. So we're going to be able to have this year the families, first responders, and survivors at the location of the Inner Memorial, plus our speakers. We're going to be able to do that again live this year, and we'll have a satellite location for the general public at Dr. Phillips Center, where they do the Front Yard Festival, because we know people are going to want to come and be a part of it, but we're also having to follow what COVID guidelines we have currently. Well, it's a big week. There's a lot of opportunities for people to be involved however they want to be involved. There's actually some other events that we're still working on that aren't on the calendar yet. Orlando City Soccer will be doing a Pride game once their MLS schedule is released, and they're going to invite the families and first responders and survivors to be their guests at the game. We'll be doing some special promotions during the game, and the History Center will be doing its 5-year Pulse exhibit as well, which will actually start in May. But the interesting thing is, and the fun thing for us is, during the week of our remembrance, they're going to open up and make it free for the public to come and see it that week. And there's more to come, and we're going to publish probably in about 2 weeks the full calendar, because there is so much. But we also wanted to be really mindful. We didn't want to put any additional stress on anyone, like the families or survivors, first responders. So we really tried to do maybe one major event or remembrance each day of that week, so people felt like they could get to everything if they wanted to, and not feeling like everything was just going to be on the 12th as well.
A lot. I love how involved you have everybody in all of these events. I like how you're approaching it, that you want to be mindful of how they're going to be involved. I mean, I'm a first responder in my own town, and I know that anytime anything like that happens, I would want to be involved in my own community. But at the same token, I probably wouldn't want anyone to know that I was involved to a degree, and not for any reason other than I don't want to feel special. I don't want to feel like, oh, I did anything. Even though you're there, you're doing all this, you're doing a lot of things to help your community the night of that event, but then again, like you don't want to take away any of the recognition from those that were directly impacted. You're there on the periphery as a first responder helping, but sometimes,
Sure.
I know in my own brotherhood of the firehouse I'm a part of, it's like, we don't want a camera on us. We want to go do our job, and then go, we'll go talk about it having a beer, and we love doing that. And I want to be around all the people.
Yeah.
But
you guys, that's spoken like a true
yes,
responder.
That's exactly what we heard.
Yeah.
What would you guys like to do if we could do an event just for you, and that's the barbecue was the answer?
Just make sure there's food and beer.
Everyone felt like that was a really nice way to come together, and some of them, believe it or not, haven't seen each other since the tragedy too, because people came from everywhere, and some have, and some don't see each other as much as they want to see each other. So we believe that'll be a nice way for them just to kind of get back together and remember, and we can honor them just from our staff as well.
Yeah, I just love how thoughtful you are about every, and very, very intentional about every move you make, from surveying everybody to having everybody involved in major decisions. I mean, that is what's going to make you successful. And I love hearing it just in my own personal right in what I do, and as well as just knowing the impact you're having. I mean, I think that's phenomenal.
Thank you.
Thank you. This project is for the community. It is for the world. It's not, for us. So we're not, we need everyone's input from the very beginning to get it done.
And the way it changed our city forever, I believe, people feel an ownership with it and to it, because
Absolutely.
I'm sure.
Even if they weren't directly impacted by it, they still were impacted, just living here and working here. So people feel a great deal of ownership to it, and we recognize that in everything we do. We always, every major thing that we do, make sure that not only it's the family, survivors, first responders, but then going to the general public too, to get, everyone's feedback. We do listening sessions. We do, I think early on you did at all the libraries.
Oh, yeah.
Just conversations, and we try to do that. And then we do online surveys as well for people who don't live here, so we can get feedback beyond Orlando as well. One of the things that I forgot to mention that we're doing, it's an easier way if people don't live here, especially, to get involved with the Remembrance Day, is we're going to do a video and ask people why they think it's important never to forget this day. And it gives us an opportunity that someone can upload a video, 2 minutes or less, and just share kind of what Barbara said earlier. Where were you on that day? Whatever is meaningful to them as an individual, just sharing with us why they feel like this, June 12th should never be forgotten.
Right.
That's a great idea. How do you go about when you, outside of your direct local Orlando community, how do you go about connecting? I know you mentioned that you were trying to connect with all, have individuals from all 50 states participate all around the world, 15 different countries you mentioned. How do you go about connecting? Like, I live up in New Jersey. How do you go about connecting with different folks all over to be a part of it if they're not physically there?
Some of the easier ways, and which again, I'm so surprised to see some of it, but we keep in contact with a lot of the local pride groups that run the individual prides across the country and even beyond, out in Europe as well and other places beyond the States. And especially this year, they all have been contacting us. We've been doing countless meetings to see how we can be a part of their pride celebrations, and that's happened for years as well. And how they can be a part of what we're doing and to keep that connectivity happening there. The other thing is, I think it just honestly, it goes back to what we talked about, the global interest in feeling a part of this. We do a lot of proactive communications and reaching out to people, but we also just receive a lot of people come to us and say, how can we be involved? What can we do? How can we volunteer? How can we be involved virtually with things that you're doing? We have survivors and family members all across the country as well. They're not just here in Orlando. We have people in Puerto Rico and other places. So, wherever they are, they carry the story with them to those communities too. And as Barbara said, there's so many people that have a story that connect them to the Pulse from going there even prior to the tragedy. So it's almost organic and natural as well. Plus, the other thing for us is through partnerships and sponsorships, and our board being such a national board, there are a lot of global companies wanting to be a part of what we're doing as well. So then, say we get involved with a company, and then they have an employee resource group or an ERG, and there's an LGBT group within that, and they want to be a part of what we're doing. So it's almost like a domino effect, right? And it's strong. I'm amazed at how strong it is. And then just even our social media reach. And when we look at, do some listening there and see who's following us, both not only on the OnePULSE Foundation channels, but the Pulse Nightclub channels as well. It's national and it's global, and people really have an interest. Especially, I think, as the 5-year remembrance is a milestone. If you go 5-year, 10-year, 15-year, people want to come back. They want to see how everyone's doing. It's a big milestone.
So, obviously the mission and the purpose is without question, strong and gravitating. It pulls people in. But, every organization needs help from, some popularity. Personally, on your board, there's some local celebrities that we could name, that had national, boy band across the country back in their days. But tell us about who you just brought on recently. It's going to help you internationally. That's an exciting story, right?
Sure. Oh gosh, it's phenomenal. And when we were about to launch our Out Love Hate campaign, even prior to that, we were talking about the opportunity to have national spokespeople, plural, because of the project taking over 3 years to get from construction to finish and opening. And we had learned from some other communities and other projects that people had done that prior to us. So we had probably put down our list of top 10, and Ricky was always at the top of that list. And he happened to be here, I think, in November of last year. It was right before the elections, I think he was here, and came to the Anna Memorial, and Barbara had a chance to go there and meet with him and talk to him and kind of tour him through the memorial. And I think it aligns with his own personal beliefs and things that he feels that are important. We were given the name of his manager, and we did a follow-up meeting, and she couldn't have been lovelier. Yeah. And it's been one of those things where we just kind of gave our mission, our vision, and said, here's where we want to go with this. We want to launch this campaign called Out Love Hate in February on Valentine's Day, and it gives everyone an opportunity to be part of the permanent museum for $49. And we're also going to build a community of love at the same time. And they were in. I mean, it was one of the best conversations ever.
Like, okay,
we're in.
Okay.
And they've been that way ever since. And our goal is to play to his strengths and play to his team's strength. They've already done weekly social media posts for us. They've got some surprises coming up in the next few months that we're working on with them. And he wants to use his platform to help us reach more people, to your point, which is great because he's global. And we're excited because he's got, if all goes well with recovery with COVID and vaccinations and everything, he's supposed to start a tour this fall, and he'll be here in Orlando in October. So they're a dream team to work with, and we're really excited about it. We also have a list of other people that we've contacted. We're in conversations with a few others right now, and hopefully we'll be making some announcements in the near future. And we've been really fortunate to see a lot of influencers join our Out Love Hate campaign as well. Just last week, Richard Branson. So Richard Branson joined us.
Oh, wow.
And some of the people, yeah, which was huge because he has one of the largest Twitter and LinkedIn followings. And there's others that have joined as well. The great thing about it, when you go on outlovehate.com right now and look at the diversity of the people who are on there, it's everything we would hope it would be. It's an age and demographics and backgrounds, and people are putting photos of their families on there and of their loved ones and their pets, and it's a great thing to see, and we're really excited about it, and as we make more people aware of it.
And if you don't know what its purpose is, it's not just a fundraising campaign, but when we set out to do this project, you know, there's always that wall when you walk in any museum or any large institution that says the donors, the founding donors. And so to get on that wall, you know, you have to write a big check, and most people can't do that. I mean, and so we know that there is this huge community around the world and in our country who this project means a lot to. And they're like, this means a lot to me. How can I be a part of this project? I want my name on this. And so this campaign allows that, because when you upload your picture and you make your $49 donation, your picture becomes part of this digital mural that's going to live in the museum. So when you walk in, we're creating a digital donor wall. So you'll have 1 million people up there. We'll have created this donor wall, and you can go up there, and your family and generations to come after you're gone can type in your name, and your picture's just going to pop right up.
Yeah.
And they'll say that, you know, my aunt, my sister, my brother, my mother supported this. And so you will be there, your name, your statement, and your photo. And so it's been a lot of fun. I actually did this with one of our board members who's elderly. He has his first great-grandchild. And so he's like, I want to be on the wall. I'm like, okay. So he comes to the office because he's not technology, he's in his 80s. And he says, help me do it. So, okay, so he wanted a picture of him and his great-grandson, who's I think maybe 5 months old or something. And he says, because when I'm gone and he's grown up and he can come to this museum and he can put in my name and he'll see with me and him, we're on this wall together. And that this project was important to me. And I thought, and he wrote, love knows no age.
Oh, I know.
And it was just so amazing. And so it just really tells you about the legacy you're leaving behind as well. And there's nowhere else in the country you can do that for $49.
Yeah,
it just isn't. So
it really makes it accessible to a lot of people. And we heard that loud and clear before that, is people wanted to be a part of it, but they couldn't afford like a typical $1,000 gift or whatever it would cost in other places to get on a wall like that. So we feel like we've made it very accessible for anyone who wants to be a part of it. And now what's great too is we're seeing companies, you know, that have employee matches wanting to buy portraits for their employees or with their employees, or if their employees want to buy it, then they're going to match it. We see entire companies getting involved and wanting their employee base to be involved. We've got pride groups from all over the world wanting to be involved, and just individuals. And that's another reminder when we see, you know, who's joining. It's all over the place again. It's every state, beyond the states, and to be a part of that, you know, with your family, with your loved ones, with your pet, however you want to be remembered for future generations is what's really great.
yeah, it's kind of fun. You can change your photo, you can change your picture, your colors.
Yeah.
I've played around with it.
Yeah,
It's fun.
and you can, you know, you can choose your own commitment statement. We give you options for others. But a lot of people are writing their own too, so you can make it really unique and personalized as well.
So you have a direct link to what you're going to portray as yourself in that lifetime memorial, huh? Oh, that's certainly something new as well.
Yeah, and it's fun because every time you go back on the site, the order of the portraits change and the photos change. So one day, you know, I could be next to Barbara. The next day, I could be next right to one of my best friends, or you're next to Ricky, or Sir Richard Branson, or
like,
hey, okay. It's really nice.
You got to be in a top tier of the 1%ers to be in the same light as Sir Richard Branson. So that, you know, it doesn't come around very often. You know,
it's amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah, and it speaks in everything you do, which I think is the important message of all. I mean, you mentioned before about how different memorials and different tragedies have evolved and how they talk about themselves, and some are somber. Everything about you is warm, welcoming, inclusive. I mean, it's everything that you stand for, I think, in everything you do, even all the way down to the level of who we want to target for not target, but who we want to bring in as donors, and we want to make sure it's inclusive. I mean, most people can afford a $49 donation, and you get recognition. You get to be presented. You get to say your message. You get to be involved in the message. I think those are things that sometimes get lost in many nonprofits in the world of just, it's everything you do. You've created this mission, you've created this vision, you've created this, what you stand for, your core values, and you carry it in everything you do. And I think from everything I've heard, I think that's one of of all the impressive things you're doing. I think that, you've made that happen, and it just everything you've said in this short conversation, it just all follows suit in that same umbrella of what you stand for, which I love. I love to hear. It's going to keep you successful forever.
Thank you.
So from your perspective, you're doing so many good things, and I'm sure you're working 24/7. How can the public, that they haven't, already stepped up to help you? Where does your organization need assistance if you were to say, whether it's donations, whether it's volunteers, whether it's just sharing our message, where do you feel that you need the most assistance from the public? Just, given that, we like to display that, we distribute this out to the public. So, if you said, hey, I have an ask, this is what it would be, hopefully that can help you a little bit, or help the public know how they can step in to help.
No, you can.
Okay.
In almost every way.
That's true. I mean, we try to open up as many opportunities as possible. So, we're supported by individual gifts, by corporate gifts, from foundations, from even state, federal, and so there's always opportunities from just traditional fundraising that way, and people who want to donate. We do year-end giving. We do campaigns throughout the year where people can feel like they can become part of it. Obviously, we talked a lot about Out Love Hate. That's really something that we feel like a lot of people could get behind right now, and it's affordable, and many people could do it. That's a current way of doing it. We always have a need for volunteers. Even at our interim memorial at the nightclub site, we have people that come by and help us keep it just looking beautiful. Honestly, we have volunteer groups that want to come by and help us beautify it and keep it looking good. So we have a need for that.
We also have needs for professional services. Like, we've had people step up and like, okay, I know wayfinding, or I know how to help you with strategic planning. I know how to help you with, and they donate their professional services. I mean, our committees are full of incredible people from all over, amazing companies. But even at our level here, when we can have people back in the office, we always need that too. So expertise is helpful.
Yeah.
But really, for the general public, I mean, to participate in Out Love Hate, to join the virtual run, I mean, these are real, grassroots ways you can help support this and have fun with it and be a part of our mission. Some people have to be dosed at the site. People come there and they want to be trained to come and give a tour, and so they stand there and they talk to people who come. It's a hard thing to do. It is. But people love to do it.
We also, just even with the two big events like Barbara mentioned coming up for the Community Rainbow Run, we need a lot of volunteers for that. And you can go on our website and go under the volunteer section. But we have needs for pre-event setup, packet setup, the day of event. I think we have over 100 volunteers needed the day of the race, which again is Saturday, June 5th. We'll need volunteers for our June 12th remembrance. So there's always volunteer opportunities. And Kelsey, who runs our volunteer program, is wonderful to work with, and she will get back to anyone who wants to volunteer. She's always looking to build our volunteer base. But just all the events that are coming up and the things that Barbara mentioned, we try to put ongoing opportunities out there for people to get engaged with us.
We are actually in May, Bloomingdale's, our local Bloomingdale's, they've done it before. They couldn't do it last year because of COVID, but they let us do a pop-up shop. And they take all of our merchandise and they display it for us. They don't skew it. We have to man it. And so that means as long as we can man it, we can be there. But if we can't man it, then we can't. So we love having great volunteers who will just sit there for a few hours in Bloomingdale's, which isn't so bad, and help us in that area. And also Bloomingdale's, not necessarily for a pop-up shop, but they have actually partnered with us in six national stores. And in the month of June, I'm not sure, what is it they're going to do on the windows?
Yeah, with our Out Love Hate campaign, they're going to help us in 6 of their major markets, but also that coveted window on 53rd and 3rd, I believe, 55th and 3rd. So one of the other things I wanted to mention that we didn't talk about through our educational programming, we do conversation series, and they are free film screenings that happen once a quarter. And our next one is coming up on May 19th, and it's sponsored by JP Morgan, Chase, and Lockheed Martin and Skanska, but it's a film called Disarm Hate, and it specifically ties back to the Pulse tragedy because it was written after the tragedy about a group of LGBTQ activists who get in a bus, a van, basically, a mini bus, and they travel from the West Coast to the East Coast to go to a rally because they just feel the need to do something. But along the way, the beauty of the story is, even as members of the LGBTQ plus community, they have these really great conversations about how they don't know each other, right? So you could have a gay man, a lesbian, you could have transgender, you could have bisexual, you could have someone who's straight, all in this bus on their way to this journey. But the whole film came out and was created because of what happened at Pulse.
I mean, to watch that, one of the most poignant parts for me, and I've watched the movie maybe once or twice in full length, but when we had one girl who was bi, and she says, "You don't even see me.
Yeah.
I don't count to any of you." And they just sat there. Even the trans woman was just like, "Oh, you know, it's just, it was interesting to see how they would just can talk to each other." And that's what I was talking about earlier, that you really want to get rid of that within the own community, make everyone united there. So it's a great film series.
Yeah, so we're gonna do that one on May 19th at 7 p.m. and then we do a panel afterwards for discussion. And the panel for this film is actually gonna be the cast, and they're a fun group. It's gonna be a great conversation. And Dr. Earl Mowat, who is our VP of Education, runs these, and we'll be doing once a quarter. We've done one. We did one in February to kick it off. This one's May 19th.
And how do you
do 2 more?
How do you get connected to that?
It's virtual, and so
Okay.
yeah, you'll be able to see. We'll do a press release about it. We have you can find out about it on our website and our social media as well. But it's free. It's free to anyone who wants to join.
And I think at the end of the year, we have one more after this, and then at the very end of the year, it'll be a full screen of the full movie with the cast in person, hopefully. So yeah,
so this Disarm Hate in May is what we're calling the director's cut, because we needed it to be 20-30 minutes. The actual full film is over an hour. So back in November, coming in November, we're hoping we'll be able to do it in person by then with everyone. And then the one that we're doing in September is we're doing September, I believe, is Selma to Stonewall. So some really great films.
Amazing. So I have a question for both of you. So it seems like there's so many different things that you've done and so many ripple effects and so many different directions with that specific community and others and across the world. So for each of you, what's the most recent thing that you've been like taken aback by? Like where you're just like, wow, this is so beyond like anything, like just my love and my passion for this and this community and just everything in between. Like, what was a moment most recently? Or you can tell me maybe your first moment. I'm curious about either or both. That you were like, oh my gosh. I mean, I know you both stepped into this at different times.
There's so many. I mean, especially us, like we'll get off a call or a meeting and something happens. It's like, can you believe that just happened? And it's a constant reminder. It kind of goes back to what we talked about, before. For me, because I've lived here in Orlando since '93 and seen the change in the community, it's these constant reminders of the global impact here. And even doing the calls with the Global Pride organizations, everyone, I always ask the question, why do you think the world responded to this tragedy different than other tragedies? And it's what Barbara said earlier. It's because it could have been any gay nightclub in any city in any part of the world, and it's a sacred and safe place and space, and that was taken away. And it could have been any one of us. And I think everyone recognizes it and everyone feels it. And I think that's why we see this coming together of people from all over the world and kind of just dropping everything and saying, okay, we're just here to support and love. And that's really the legacy of Pulse is love. And that's one of our words. And And I think it flows through everything we do. It's that common thread through everything that we do.
Yeah, I think it's like, if to give you some specifics, I mean, one day it can be the fact that you've met a pastor of an evangelical church who grew the biggest non-denominational church here in Orlando, who after the shooting said, I missed something here. Why is my community not connected to this community? And he, tried to make some changes, and he left his church. And he left a church he built. And then the next day, it could be like today when we were talking to a father of a victim who story, he was a pastor in a black church, and when the shooting happened, and how the church that he had grown from like 14 people to thousands of people, let him bury his daughter. And so, and then, so you're moved by that, and that's a moment. And then you have a moment like a Ricky Martin moment. And then you have, you go from every spectrum every moment is a wow moment, but from a different emotional place. Because when I hung up with him today, I looked at you and I was weeping. I thought, this is why we do this. This is why what we do is so important.
Yeah.
And so I guess it's just, it happens every day, but it happens at different emotional levels.
And Barbara gets to say that almost every day because something literally happens almost every day. It's a good reminder, when you think of companies and nonprofits and everything, sometimes you have to search and dig, and it's like, okay, why we're here, what's our purpose? We get reminded of it every day through stories of the families and the survivors and first responders that we talk to daily, through sponsors, through people wanting to be a part of what we're doing, for local partnerships, national partnerships. It's just, there's always a reminder. And then unfortunately, there are other things that happen in the world that remind us that, we still have work to do.
I remember the first time the board itself ever assembled for its first board meeting. And when we went around and interviewed board members and we picked them, we didn't tell them who else was on the board. So they didn't know anybody was going to be on that board until they all got into one room. They all came from around the country. And so the very first board meeting literally consisted of, besides the regular stuff that happens later, consists of, why are you here? What's your story? And no one expected that. You had 20 people who went around the room and told them their why. There wasn't a dry eye. I'm sitting in a room with people from like VPs and CEOs, like of very large companies, and I'm just watching them. And I thought to myself, wow, that was my first moment. Wow, that it was just so powerful. And then you just realize they're in this just like we are.
Yeah.
And I think it's the one place they get to be just, in it for their own personal reasons. So it was just, like I said, it happens every day.
And I think too, our educational programming that we mentioned is really focuses on how we're more alike than different. And I think everyone is craving that now.
Yeah.
Everyone wants to feel unified. Everyone wants to feel a part of something bigger than themselves. And I think that's another driver for us, is we hear those stories too, is that people just want to feel a part of something, and we've focused so much in the last few years on how we're different. I think everyone's ready to have the conversation of how are we really more alike, and there really are more commonalities, and how can we get to common ground, and how can we have courageous conversations. And that's really what our education programs are going to be, and what we want them to be. And we really want to encourage those conversations, and they will be a part of the museum too, and what happened in the museum, and telling the stories of everyone impacted.
Yeah, you guys have such a well-rounded grouping of opportunities and offerings and just ways for people to get involved and to feel connected no matter where they're at in their lives, even trauma-based, just any sort of trauma extent almost. It all overlaps, and that is important. You stand for a specific mission, but how you talk to these communities, everybody can relate to and feel part of and connected. And then that reminds you that we all are connected at the end of the day. And when you start, it's a whole domino effect, because when you realize that there's so much that can be supported, that should be supported, and it shouldn't always take a tragedy, but at times those tragedies is what brings everybody together and opens a lot of people's eyes in so many ways.
So true.
Yeah. What do you guys, if you wanted to tell our listeners like one takeaway, or just like one final sort of wrap up like statement, or just like passion statement for what you do and your organization and how they can get involved, What would it be?
That's a great question. I think for
What's
me
your
it goes back to,
elevator speech?
yeah. Well, I mean, it kind of goes back to what we talked about. It, our promise to everyone is we will not let hate win, and we talk about love and that being the legacy. And I recently, Barbara's known this longer than I have, but even talking to the nightclub staff, and seeing them as a group and seeing the bond among that group and their stories about what that nightclub was prior to the tragedy and how it was a place where you could bring your mom, you could bring your dad, you could bring your aunt and uncle, just repeated stories of that, right? Because it was a place of love. I think that's what drives us in everything we do. And, obviously out love hate, we thought, like, even launching that, it's in everything we do, is this bringing people together, the unity piece of it, trying to make sure that people just, like we said, focus on how we're more alike, and that love can enter easily that way once you start looking at everything through a different lens. So I feel personally that everything we do, we're really trying to get people there, is to look at life differently, look at it through a different lens, kind of break down the barriers, and let's just support each other and help each other. And we have a great opportunity in front of us with the memorial, the National Memorial Museum and the Survivors Walk, to make sure that we tell the stories of not only what the nightclub was prior to the tragedy, but what every one of the 49 Angels story was. That's really important, that people know who they were prior and what their dreams and aspirations were, the survivors, the first responders, and then we have an opportunity to educate future generations so something like this doesn't happen again.
Yeah, I think for me, I always say this project, this National Memorial Museum, is our social and our moral responsibility. We are the keepers of this history. It is our job to get it right. It is our job to make sure that it doesn't happen again. And then we, it is this generation Stonewall. And so, I think when you own it and you live it and you breathe it and you walk it every day and you talk it every day, and it becomes part of your life every day, you'll start to see change in the world. And so the mission is that when you've walked through the experience that we want to put together for people and children and families and old and young and generations who are coming, they leave there changed. I've been to a couple of these experiences. I've been to a lot of museums and memorials in this last 4.5 years. There's a couple I walked out of changed forever. And I know that. And that is what we want people to feel like when they leave our place.
That's beautiful.
Love it.
Wonderful.
All
Yeah,
right.
it's definitely a memorial that you can take and make future change versus some of the memorials that exist out there that are really just past history and kind of where it resides at. It's a good message.
Yeah, it's a new
All
perspective.
right. Well, over time. Over time, we
Yeah.
all have other things to move to. So, any other questions or?
No, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it. We appreciate being able to share your message and really just want to highlight what a wonderful organization you are and the impact you're having, and hope that we can help make more of an impact for you. So we appreciate it. And thank you so much for taking the opportunity to talk with us today.
Yeah, thank you.
Always. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you for your time too.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. I'm sure we'll talk soon. Have a good day.
Hey, Warriors. Thanks for tuning in. Make sure to subscribe to Civic Warriors, and thanks for all your support. Have a great day.